God didn't create the world one day just because he felt like it. God created everything because he has a plan. He created Adam and Eve in his image to forever be in relationship with them and all the people that would come after them. And even better, God had created an amazing place for them to live and enjoy relationship with each other, with God's creation, and with God himself. It was called the Garden of Eden. The garden was filled with animals and all kinds of amazing trees full of delicious fruit, and it had a beautiful river to keep everything watered and healthy. But Adam and Eve didn't just sit around and eat fruit and watch animals. They'd been given a purpose by God. But what was it? Well, the Lord gave Adam a special job. He was to work to keep the garden healthy and to give names to all the creatures that God had created. God also told Adam, "You can eat of every tree in the garden except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For on the day you eat of it, you will surely die." After Adam was given his purpose, God created Eve to be a helper for him because it was not good that man was alone. Together, Adam and Eve would fulfill the purpose God had given them, to care for his creation and to fill the earth with more people who would know and love God. But later on, the Bible introduces us to a new character in the story, a serpent. The Bible tells us that the serpent was more crafty and deceitful than any other animal that God had made. One day, the serpent found Eve in the garden and began to speak to her. The serpent asked her, "Did God really tell you not to eat from any tree in the garden?" Eve told the serpent that they could eat from any tree in the garden, but not to even touch the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or they would die. "You will not die," the serpent told her. "God just knows that when you eat from it, you will be like him, knowing good and evil." Well, when Eve realized that the fruit looked very good and could apparently make her wise like God, she took some and ate it. Adam was with her, and when she gave some to him, he ate too. Then the Bible tells us their eyes were opened, but what they knew now was not good. They were filled with shame and guilt. They had disobeyed God. Disobedience against God is called sin, and Adam and Eve had just let sin into the perfect world that God had created, and sin had broken everything. Well, Adam and Eve's relationship with God was different now. It was broken, and they hid from him, and their relationship with each other was broken. When God came to them and asked them what happened, Adam sinned again by blaming Eve. Then Eve blamed the serpent. The perfect world that God had created was no longer perfect. So the Lord explained to everyone the consequences of this sin. The serpent was cursed above all other animals, and instead of walking on its legs, it would begin to slither on its belly for eternity. The serpent and Eve would be enemies, and it would be a battle that the serpent would not win. The woman would have a descendant who would defeat the serpent once and for all. Eve would still have children to fill the earth with, but it would now be painful. Her partnership with Adam would be different as well. He would rule over her. Adam would continue to work the ground, but now it would be much harder and more painful. Because of their sin, Adam and Eve were forced to leave the Garden of Eden. They were no longer sinless and could not be in a relationship with God, who is perfect. Their sin had separated them from God. Sin had destroyed everything. Well, almost everything. God's plan was not destroyed. He always had a plan to be in relationship with His people. God gave Adam and Eve the same choice that He gives all of us. He allowed them to choose to trust in Him as Lord or to trust in themselves. God allowed them, and God allows us to make a choice to follow Him or ourselves. Unfortunately, Adam and Eve chose to sin. All of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. A sin is anything we do, say, or think that goes against God's commands. When sin entered the world through Adam and Eve's disobedience, the whole world fell into sin. No one can be perfect, but God always had a plan for us to be forgiven and set free from sin. Sin destroys everything. Almost. When Adam and Eve sinned, everything in God's perfect world that He had created was broken. They could no longer be in a perfect relationship with God because God is perfect and they were not. And the same is true for all people. But no amount of sin can destroy God's plan. When God promised Eve a descendant who would crush the head of the serpent, He was talking about how Jesus would come one day and defeat sin and death. This promise came true. Jesus did come, and He made a way for all people to be freed from sin and in a perfect relationship with God again.